Nobody wants war. No soldier I know, no Marine, no sailor, no airman of any country wants a conflict. But we also know that the best way to prevent that conflict is to be ready for it, to demonstrate that we are prepared, we're ready to do whatever it takes to defend all of our strategic interests, to defend our friends, to defend our people. That's how you prevent conflict. My name is Ben Hodges. I'm originally from Quincy, Florida. I was commissioned as an infantry officer from West Point in May of 1980. And for the next 38 years, I served as an infantry officer in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, in the 101st Airborne Division, in Germany as a lieutenant, in Korea as a major, in Iraq and Afghanistan as a colonel and a brigadier general. And then I ended my career once again in Germany as the commander of U.S. Army Europe. Since retiring, I have worked hard to strengthen the relationship between the United States and Europe and America's role inside NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the most successful alliance in the history of the world. I'd like to talk to you about why it is so important that the United States has a strong relationship with our European allies, why our alliance is so important with all of its imperfections, why we are safer because of our strong transatlantic relationships, but also about our role, about what we have to do to protect democracy at home and abroad. Because our democracy here in the United States and in our allied countries is under attack. The relationship between the United States and Europe is so important for a variety of reasons. First of all, our economies are intertwined. Prosperity in the United States, our economic prosperity, is tied directly to stability and security and prosperity in Europe. The European Union is the largest trading partner for the United States in the world. Nobody else is even close. It affects our economy because of exports as well as imports, markets, labor, the connections of all of our businesses. So stability and security in Europe is to our benefit. We also have the benefit of bases that are in Germany, Spain, Italy, UK, Greece, Turkey, and now Poland. These are all places that allow us to carry out our strategic efforts in Africa, Eurasia, the Middle East, as well as Europe. And then finally, even with the largest defense budget in history, the United States military does not have enough capacity and capabilities to do everything that's needed to defend the United States and defend our allies from those external threats. We need allies, and all of our best and most reliable allies are in Europe, as well as in Canada and Australia. That's why the relationship between the United States and Europe is so important. That doesn't mean that we're going to get along with each other all the time, but the North Atlantic Treaty Organization was a recognition that we needed an alliance of nations with shared values that were committed to each other in collective defense. And that alliance has worked since 1949. All the members of the alliance have fought against each other in the past, but not since joining NATO have any of us been in a conflict with each other. And that is our best guarantee for security and freedom for all of our people. Again, the alliance is not perfect. There are debates, arguments, huge fights all the time between different members of the alliance, but yet we stick together. Article 5, the article of the Washington Treaty which created NATO, is the one that says an armed attack on one shall be considered an armed attack on all. Only once in the history of the alliance has Article 5 been invoked, and that was after the attack on the United States on 9/11, and all of the members of the alliance said that they consider that as an armed attack on them. That's the strength of our alliance. I think it's important that we think about why we are in NATO and why it's important that we contribute not only investment but also exercises our people and our commitment. And there is the possibility that nations will sometimes forget why they're in the alliance when the threat is not so obvious that we are under attack or potential attack. And so things like Russia's invasion of Ukraine remind us that there are nations out there, autocratic nations, that don't like what we are. They don't want to see us be prosperous. They don't want to see democratic nations unleash the talent of their young people. I suspect that many people in the United States and other countries, other NATO countries, are not even really sure what the alliance is about or how it runs or who pays for it. There's a lot of misinformation out there. It's the job of our leaders to remind the populations this is why we have allies. This is why it's to our benefit to belong to the alliance. This is why we are safer and more secure because we have an alliance that can deter, that can compel other nations that are thinking about an attack of some sort that they would fail, that it would be too costly. That's how the alliance has been protecting all of our citizens for more than 7 decades. The Allies have high expectations of the United States. Of course, we carry the largest share of the load in terms of capability, but this is to our benefit at the end of the day. Nonetheless, we have got to live up to those expectations of our allies. So it's the cohesion of the alliance. That is the center of gravity for our security. All 30 nations of the alliance sticking together. And there are still other nations in a queue wanting to join NATO. There's nobody knocking on the door of the Kremlin saying, please let me in. There's nobody in Beijing or Tehran saying, hey, we really want to be a part of an alliance with you. They want to join this community of shared values and collective defense. That's what NATO is, and that's why American leadership and participation in the alliance is so important. And today, in Ukraine, democracy is under attack. So it's in our interest that we help Ukraine be successful, because if Ukraine fails, if the attack by Russia, an autocratic nation, against Ukraine, a struggling new democracy, fails, then that will send a message around the world that the West, the democratic nations of the West, cannot or are not willing to defend democracy. The Chinese will be watching, the Iranians are watching, the North Koreans are watching. So it's important that Ukraine is successful in defending itself against Russia's attack. It's in our interest to do that. Ukraine's only been at this for about 30 years. They had none of the pillars or the institutions necessary for a democracy: elections, free and fair elections, a free media, judicial systems that were fair. All the things that we almost take for granted in the West, those didn't exist. And yet they are fighting for it. Here we in the United States have been at it for about 2.5 centuries, and we still don't have it right. So this is part of a global struggle for democracy against autocracy. In Ukraine today, despite all the advantages Russia had when they attacked back on 24 February of 2022, earlier this year, they have not been able to accomplish their objectives. Ukrainian soldiers, Ukrainian people have fought back. They have stopped the Russians, despite Russia having every single advantage except will. There's Ukrainian people that they want to be free. They want a democratic government. And so finally, it looks like we are giving the Ukrainians the capabilities that they need to destroy or disrupt Russian artillery, Russian rocket fire, which is causing all the damage. Now, that means the burden is on our leaders to explain why this matters, what the strategic outcome is. We've gotten this wrong several times. We failed in Iraq, we failed in Afghanistan, we failed in Vietnam. We've got to get this right now. There's so much at stake. Nobody wants war. The expense of it, the cost in human life, the destruction, the cost to rebuild. This is very expensive, and it's putting a lot of pressure on all of us. Gas prices, food prices, economies of all the nations are being affected. It has real impact on us. If we don't help Ukraine now, if Ukraine is not successful now, then we're going to be doing the same thing for the next several years. Russia will just wait for another opportunity, and they will continue doing what they're doing. We know this from history. So now is the time that we have to stick together and make sure that Ukraine wins, that it is able to regain all of its sovereign territory, and that we damage Russia enough so that it can no longer threaten other democratic nations on its border. That's what this is about. We are so much better when we work together rather than dividing ourselves from each other.